This is James Arnold Taylor, the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Welcome to a more civilized podcast. This is the podcast you're looking for. You may not go about your business. Stay here, listen, and then move along.
Hi there, listeners. Welcome to yet another surprise Chris Nerf Nugget.
Hey, this one's a little less surprising. I did say in the episode that, hey, I'll watch those and come back to this.
Yeah.
So if you didn't, read the title before you read this, this is Battle of the Bads Revisited.
Yep.
Couple months ago,
Yeah.
some period of time ago, we had an episode in which Ross and Kyler each sat down and tried to convince me which movie was worse, episode 1 or episode 2. And I narrowly settled on episode 1 being the worst, with the promise that, let me say I haven't watched those movies in going on a decade.
Yeah.
So I'll go rewatch those.
That episode, by the way, is episode 13, Battle of the Bads.
Thank you, Kyler.
October 24th.
So I said I will rewatch those, and once I get that done, we will revisit this and really lay it to rest. So I did that. My sons and I made it through the original trilogy and took a little break off, and then my son wanted to watch some more Star Wars, and he said, hey, let's go watch that again. And I said, that's a great idea. We will do that sometime, but there's still more.
Oh,
and so we picked
reaction?
up. He was quite excited, actually. It was great.
Good
He
for
just
him.
there's more? And I was like, son, there's so much more. Oh my gosh. You have no
cannot
idea.
comprehend, little Dean.
Yeah. Though that said, I will insert right here, I never did mention, in our very first episode, I mentioned how I was raising my son with no knowledge of Star Wars, or at least as close to it as I could, so that I could vicariously experience the revelation of Darth Vader's true identity. And I did get to do that. The fact that we watched prequels does mean that we did that. And it was pretty fun. He actually, we sat down, we were watching it, and he actually talked during the line.
Oh,
yeah.
no!
So and I was like, son, did you hear what he said? And he's like, no. And we all just, because I had my sister there, I had my wife there recording it, and I was like, okay, we'll skip, we'll rewind it. And then I was like, oh, dang it. The DVD player we were using, we have no idea where the remote is. We haven't known for years. And so you can only use the buttons on the console, and none of those includes the ability to rewind. So we had to take it out, take it into a different room, and plug it into that DVD player, skip forward, and then finally we watched it there, rewatched it, and my son just sort of, he says the line, and my son just sort of sat there. And then, did you hear what he said? And he's like, yeah. He said he's his dad. And I was like, well, what do you think about that? And he just, I don't think it's true. And I was like, all right, fair enough.
Fair enough, yeah.
Fair enough. And so then afterwards, I sat him down. I was like, all right, so no, seriously though, son, what did you think? And he's just like, I don't think that's true. And I was like, it is true, son. All of it. And,
At which point he went, no!
It was not quite that level of emotion, but it was. He just got this little puppy dog look on his face and just went, oh. And climbed into my lap and started cuddling me.
Aww.
And I was like, what have I done to my
guy.
son? But at the same time, kind of pleased that the idea of someone's father not being someone good and trusting and loving is just completely foreign to my son. I was happy with that.
Yeah.
And he has a healthy amount of skepticism.
Yeah.
For him to just be
I
like,
was
no,
impressed
I
with
don't
that.
I think I would have just been like, okay, and then I would have put in Return of the Jedi
I should
let
have.
him go through, Luke and all that.
But the thing with that is that it's like there wouldn't really be a moment of, yes, it is true after all. Like, there'd be acknowledgments here and there.
Well, no, but Luke does specifically go to Yoda, is Darth Vader my father?
Yeah, that is
and
true.
then Yoda goes, yeah.
But it lessens the reveal moment.
Yeah, that's what I was. And so I just said it, and it was. He was pretty. He's a tender soul.
Yeah.
And so he was. It actually took us a while to get to Return of the Jedi after that because he didn't want to watch it after that. and I asked him. I was just like, well, what do you think is going to happen, son? And he's just like, I think he's going to turn good. And I was just like, well, we'll see. And he's like, or he'll die.
Why not
and
both?
I was like, well, yeah, those are both options. And he actually really liked Return of the Jedi a lot. He said that was his favorite of them because Darth Vader became good and he liked that.
There we go.
And but so yeah.
What did he think of this battle though? Endor, space and land. What did he think?
No commentary. Yeah,
Dang
I
it.
just didn't bring that up at all.
Okay.
So we picked up Phantom Menace and sat down to watch that one. My first time in not quite a decade, I don't think, but it's been a while. And for reference, like this was at this point I knew I wanted to be a writer, and I had been like I had world builder's disease. You know, a lot of fantasy and sci-fi authors in particular get this problem when they're starting out, where it's just like, well, I'm just gonna world build, and I never actually write anything. And I had written a few things, but it was pretty sparse. Mostly I was just building worlds and really excited about the stories I was totally going to tell someday. And this was, last time I watched these was probably just before or after I actually sat down and went, okay, but seriously though, this is a thing I want to do. How do I go about doing this? And really got serious about learning the craft. And so this is really my first time sitting down with, you know, going on a decade of experience in studying stories pretty intensively, learning to be an editor, all of that sort of stuff, and to sit down and look at these with a really discerning eye and go, okay, let's look at these flaws. So, my main takeaway from Phantom Menace, the central thing that surprised me watching Phantom Menace again, was just how utterly boring it is. I was not prepared for it. Like, I went in, I was like, oh, Jar Jar's so annoying, there's so many painful moments in this that are just cringe-inducing, but there's some awesome moments, and then I watched it and I was like, you know, Jar Jar's not as annoying as I remember. Neither is anything else here. The Yippee wasn't as annoying as I remember, but nor were most of the awesome moments as awesome as I remember. Like, it just sort of was this bland wash, and I got out of it going, that was, like, it has some nice moments and stuff, but that was pretty dull. That's just... Which is a pretty grievous sin for anything that calls itself entertainment to commit.
Right.
But yeah, that was my first takeaway, where I was just like, wow, I did not expect that.
I'll agree with that. So every May, I have my 3-day holiday, or Star Wars holiday.
Yeah.
You know, Revenge, or May the 4th, yeah. Revenge of the 5th, and then Revenge of the 6th. And so I watch all the movies, and I remember last year playing games on my computer for most of episode 1 until the battle starts, until the battle on Naboo starts, and then I sit down and watch it because that part is still exciting to me, and I still really enjoy
there's definitely
that.
some solid parts in there,
but the rest of the movie, I'm like, I will count hearing it and occasionally looking over as watching this movie.
Side note, I really think that should be May the 4th be with you, The Fifth Awakens, and Revenge of the 6th, but just to keep that
Fair enough.
Anyway.
I love it.
You do you. You're good.
No, I like it. I've been looking for another one, a better acronym, so that works. That's good.
One thing I was interested in seeing with this is I was like, okay, I'm watching The Phantom Menace with a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So I'm intrigued to see how they react with Jar Jar and with Anakin, you know, because, you know, I was 12, 13 when this came out, and I was just young enough to enjoy it, but old enough to be aware that this is weird. Mm-hmm. This is weird amounts of goofiness. But I was really intrigued to see how some kids would interact. And the answer to that was, my son basically watched Jar Jar, and for most of that movie just going, what is he doing, Dad? Like, he was just like, he just did not get what was with Jar Jar. He just thought he was weird. There was like 2 points in that entire movie where he actually cracked a laugh at anything Jar Jar did. And it was basically, there's the time when Qui-Gon catches his tongue, and I forget what the other one was, but it's like, and that was it. And I was just like, and my 2-year-old wasn't laughing at all. He got even less of what was going on. So I was like, much older than that, and Dean's going to be aware that this is kind of dumb. But he's too young to really get what's going on right now. So I'm just like, what is this golden mean that they were aiming for here with Jar Jar? You know, it's just like, they failed. Jar Jar is supposed to appeal to younger audiences, and my 5-year-old was not in a place where he could enjoy the humor.
My twins were not 9. They were 8.5 or so last May when we watched these together. And
was that their first time for it?
Oh, no, not their first time. But we hadn't watched the prequels in a while, like since they were little, like 3 or 4 or something like that. And so I'm like, they haven't seen these in a while. This will be good for them to watch it again. So we, again, same thing, put in episode 1, and when Jar Jar steps in poo as they go into Mos Eisley, I remember one of my twins, she turns around and she goes, "Did he just step in poo?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he did." And she goes, "Gross." And that was her reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, you are the target audience for this character.
I was trying to play it up a little bit. I was reacting like, yeah, gross, huh? And he was just like, yeah. And I was just like, oh dang, man, that is a sound failure on the Jar Jar, all around. Quite unfortunate. Let's see, other takeaways from episode 1 that one thing was, we need more of Qui-Gon.
Oh, for sure.
I had never really quite, rewatching that, I was just like, I wish that Qui-Gon had survived that we got more of him.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a great moment where my wife, who is not as well versed in the universe as we are, but she came in as we were watching the final scene, just where Darth Maul gets cut in half and then Obi-Wan runs over to Qui-Gon and is holding him, and my wife was like, yeah. Little hole through the chest, Qui-Gon's doomed. But Darth Maul's totally gonna survive. And I was like, yep, that is pretty darn stupid and always has been. But it was even worse that time around, because I was like, Darth Maul looked awesome. He was intense. But as far as cool villains go, that's about where his coolness began and ended.
They just didn't give him enough screen time to do anything cool.
Sure. But, same with Boba, and, people just attached to it. But I was watching it, I was like, character-wise, man, I wish Qui-Gon had survived that, and it would have been far more plausible for him to do so. But, oh well. I liked Qui-Gon, though. I was watching that, and I was like, if by some miracle anyone ever gave me a chance to write something for Star Wars, I might aim for a Qui-Gon project, see if they'd let me do something with him.
That would be really cool.
I like him a lot.
Actually, I seem to remember they're doing one.
There were some books that were based off of him.
But they're also doing new canon.
Are they?
Book, I believe.
There is a Qui-Gon book coming out, I believe.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, I hope they do him justice.
Yeah,
I may actually pick that up, because I like Qui-Gon. I like we don't see a lot of Jedi that are really just kind of at odds with the council as a whole.
Right.
Obi-Wan skirts that line occasionally, but for the most part, no, not really.
Yeah.
And so I would have liked to see this, basically the libertarian
Obi-Wan
Jedi,
skirts it in the sense that, I know they will eventually approve this once they hear me out.
Yeah.
But it needs to get done right now, so I'm going to go ahead and do it right now without permission. Then when they ask me what the crap I was doing, I'll tell them what happened, and then they'll go, oh, okay, yeah, that was the right call.
Obi-Wan skirts that in the sense that he was basically raised by Qui-Gon for many of his formative years, and so he's got some tendencies that he nevertheless curbs.
Right.
But yeah, I would love to see the adventures of the libertarian Jedi. That sounds fun. Libertarian in the sense that he just doesn't really agree with anyone here.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then, but I did add one thing to our list of what episode 1 does that episode 2 doesn't really fill in, and even episode 3, actually, that I am particularly fond of this time around, which is that I got thinking about episode 6 when Luke is talking to Ghosty One, and Obi-Wan tells him his, when I met your father, he was already a great pilot. I thought I could train him as well as Yoda did. There's definitely this sense from Obi-Wan that I failed him personally, and that it was hubris that led to me failing him. And 2 and 3, 3 gets into the whole, I failed you, Anakin, and all that, but it doesn't really get into this being a point of hubris. Whereas episode 1 is the one that shows us the council saying, no, we're not going to train him. It shows Qui-Gon saying, well, stick it in your pointy ear. I'm going to train this boy, and to quote the inestimable Weird Al Yankovic, and then has Obi-Wan at the end going, thank you for raising me to Jedi. Whether or not you give me permission to train him, I am going to train him. Mm-hmm. It's the most Qui-Gon-ish he ever gets.
Yeah, that is true. Actually, that is.
And yeah, the rest of the council did okay it, but they have Yoda hang back and be like, well, no, I don't agree with it. But you definitely have that. I'm plowing ahead with this, whether or not you all think it's a good idea, and it may have not been a great idea, arguably. It's arguable that it might have just gotten even worse if they hadn't trained him, but either way, you have that note of hubris, and that because that was already something that I like. I like seeing that because it's already hinted at in the original trilogy, and you don't really get to see much of that. So I'm glad they put that in there, and it's only really in episode 1 that you really get that hubris of it. But it's even more important now that you have 7 and 8, because that's exactly what Luke's talking about in number 8. That it's that's part of why he was so shook by his failure with Kylo Ren is because he was doing exactly the same thing again. He was looking at this and saying, no, they didn't handle it, but I can handle this. I also enjoy the irony of I thought I could train him as well as Yoda did. And it's like, well, as far as we know canonically, the only person who was ever officially Yoda's apprentice was Dooku. So, good job, Obi-Wan. You trained him as well as Yoda did.
I'd say he trained him better.
Yes. At least he did. At least Vader did swerve back to the light at the end there. But,
Well, and he also went darker and defeated Dooku.
yeah, that's true. So
By
on
any
many levels, you
estimation,
could say he did that.
yeah. Good job, Obi-Wan. Don't be so hard on yourself.
But yeah, that was something that I was looking for when I was watching episode 2 to see, like, did this really come up again? And it really doesn't. It's not something that really comes in, and I would have missed that from episode 1 if we didn't have one. So then we picked up 2. We didn't wait as long for that because my son's really on a Star Wars kick. We've actually gone through 2 and the Clone Wars movie and a couple of Clone Wars at this point. Because,
Oh, good. I'm so
that kid
happy.
ain't ready for Anakin killing young not ready for that, let alone Han Solo's demise at his own son's hands.
Chris, if there's ever a favor you're willing to do for my evil little heart, please let me be there when Anakin butchers a bunch of younglings.
See what I can do. So number two had some of the same problem as number 1 with the blandness of awesome moments not being as awesome and bad moments not being as bad. But I feel like there were a few more slightly awesome moments that held their ground better in number 2. Whereas, like moments with, like all the stupid 3PO crap in the factory and throughout the battle at the end, that I always remember so cringeworthy. Not quite as bad as I remember, and my son actually did crack a laugh at least one point in that. So there's that.
Was it when he was beside himself?
No, he didn't catch any of the lines, but it was just the sight of
gag humor, the physical humor.
the physical humor that he did crack at least one gag laugh at that. And I had some moments of, like, oh yeah, I do remember how nice this whole Obi-Wan versus Jango fight was. If only for satiating the fans who always wanted to see Boba Fett be awesome. So it's like, all right, here. By extension, you can assume Boba could have done this since he is literally Jango 2.0. And arguably like 1.1.
I was going to say he's 1.0. He's an unaltered clone.
And so that was nice. But it also...
He's Jango as trained by Jango.
Yes.
Which is even better.
As partially trained by Jango. Before his training was cut abruptly quite short.
You're right.
And finished then by the other top tier bounty hunters in the galaxy.
Yeah.
Which presumably Jango didn't start out life in a, gangster babysitting club. So so Boba Fett honestly would be... That's the name. That was my band's name in college. Gangster Babysitting Club.
Naturally. But it did lead to the anticlimax at the end there, where I was watching Jango hop down into the arena to fight and get beheaded there and everything, and I just went, why did he even do that? Like, seriously, why did he join in that fight? There's no reason for it. Like, if he had like a particular grudge he wanted to settle with someone, I guess I could see doing that, but it's like, there's a slew of droids that are doing a pretty good job of taking care of business. Why throw yourself into the midst of that fray for no reason?
Does he go right after Mace Windu in the beginning, or does he go after? I'm trying to remember.
He jumps. So Mace has his lightsaber up to him. Droids come behind him. Mace
jumps off.
He does not jump
Mace
in.
doesn't jump off. Mace turns to face the droids, and that's when Jango Fett hits the rockets, jumps up.
No, it's not, because later you have one of the Jedi jump up to go after Dooku and Jango shoots him down. It's halfway through that battle that Jango joins in.
Yeah, Jango then uses his flamethrower, lights Mace a little bit on fire, and he
and
jumps
that's
off
when Mace
and takes
goes
his robe off that's burned.
But that's the thing. He does go straight after Mace, if I remember right, down in the arena. Mm-hmm. But again, it's just one of those things where I'm like, I don't see why he felt the need to do that. It just seems... basically, I feel like he felt the need to do that because they wanted him to die there. And that's that. Bad writing. But... because they wanted to show everyone, oh, look, Boba Fett had motivation for what he did or something. Like, no. Bull. No. Dumb. Anyway. However, the moment you've all been waiting for, I will say that this did tip the scales. Episode 2 is the worst movie.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Because, and here's my reasoning. For all that so much of what I remember being bad in episode 2 was just sort of just more bland now, That is not the case for every single second of Anakin and Padme's relationship. every last moment of that is horrible. Horribly written, not great performance. Like, they're trying their best, I guess, but, you know, it's like, Hayden Christensen he actually did a pretty decent job with that moment of I killed them all, like the tortured soul there. The only problem is, if he's not doing tortured soul, he's basically not that good at any of it at George's hands, at least. But yeah, it's like none of the romance is sold. I mean, poor Natalie Portman is just trying her hardest to make it even remotely plausible that this woman is falling in love with this creepy stalker psychopath. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it doesn't work. None of it does, and it's just so cringeworthy. Every last moment of it. And the reason that tipped the scales for me is because, again, I'm a writer. Episode 1 is very superfluous, as you pointed out, Kyler, in so many ways. But that's the thing. Everything that it's failing at doesn't matter that much in the long run. Anakin and Padme's relationship is the crux of this entire trilogy. It is what he turns to the dark side on. And it's horrible. It's horrible from start to finish, every last second in the entire trilogy. But the bulk of it is in episode 2, and it is so poorly done. And that, so for me, as watching that, I was just like, I didn't cringe that much in episode 1. I was constantly cringing in episode 2. And it was all Anakin and Padme. And it's just that is so important. That should be something solid. And it just, it did not. And so, yeah, after watching it myself, I'm like, again, it's still pretty narrow. And I've been doing this tilt back and forth for years now. So it might tilt again in the future. But
I'll accept your judgment if you will also admit that episode 2 is more necessary for understanding the story.
Episode 1 is more easily removed. Okay, it is as the trilogy stands. And like I said before we started, part of that falls on episode 2 for failing to distinguish itself from episode 1, since that came first. Yeah. But nevertheless, as they stand now, yes, episode 1 is the more superfluous to the story. But again, that's why episode 2 is worse, is because it is important to the story and failing.
I can accept that. I can live with that.
Pleasantly surprised. Just because knowing you and the way that you remember things, I figured that it wouldn't change.
I didn't think it would either, but it was...
I'm just glad we didn't do a slap bet with this, because now I have like 5 coming from you.
Well, but also, I think his ruling was ambiguous enough that we could have, just shaken hands and parted ways.
Yeah.
Not if there's a slap bet on the line.
I would never have agreed to that, sir. Now, the other question...
don't see it coming!
Now, in case you're wondering, based on the sound, yes, that was in fact Kyler slapping.
That was a legitimate slap.
The look of shock and betrayal was excellent.
You, sir. You, sir.
It's like throwing a grenade right in the middle of your teammates, man.
Yep. With fair warning, and they have a high likelihood of being fine. And they just don't.
Fair warning doesn't matter if there's nothing you can do about it.
Anyway.
Yeah. The other question... You, sir, you're going to be sorry.
I know.
The other question, though, that we were discussing in that last episode was what would be the easier to rewrite?
It would be episode 1.
Okay.
Now, as I would rewrite these, if someone were just like, hey, we're remaking the prequel trilogy, you've got license to do this, well, neither of them they'd scarcely be recognizable as one another. Like,
I actually have save this discussion. Save it.
Okay. But yeah, I do have in my head an entire, rough outline of what I would do with those, and I could still keep a lot of the basic overall plots where you've still got Trade Federation and Naboo, and you've still got Dooku and the Separatists, and a lot of the large-scale event moments would stay the same, but all the character interactions, huge chunks of who the characters are, would just be wiped out and replaced with other stuff, and just because it's all so bad.
So of the 2 of the 3 points still are in your favor, though. So.
I would say the number 1 is the more superfluous, number 2 is the worst move.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
There we go.
That's my final ruling.
Okay. Well, we hope you enjoyed this little Nerf nugget as much as we did, and none of you will enjoy that slap of Ross as much as I did, so we'll just leave that there. He's just shaking his head at me. Anyway, we hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, may the Force be with you.
Always.
I'm Anna Graves, and thank you for listening to a more civilized podcast.
recording. Moment of silence, please, for audio. Okay.
In loving remembrance of audio.
Yep.
Yeah.
May he rest in peace.